Hello and welcome back to another episode of Midnight Kitchen. I am Chef Adrian Minnis, and today we're going to be doing sourdough. So first you want to start off with 750 grams of all white unbleached flour. If you only have bleached flour, make sure to include 4 tablespoons of gluten powder to the mixture. You will also need 500 grams of mother-based sourdough starter. My sourdough starter is already on a month of working, and it's keep on going. Stay tuned for a video on how to start and maintain a culture for yourself. You will also need 350 grams of Tempid Water and 15 grams of salt. We're using black garlic salt just for flavor. First, you want to start by combining all of your ingredients besides the salt together. Next, we must stir all the ingredients by hand until we form a shaggy dough. If your batter feels a little too dry and doesn't feel like it's combining, feel free to add in up to 150 more grams of Tempid Water. You want just enough for it to become a silky dough. In order to not get all of your sourdough stuck to your hand, feel free to use a little bit of olive oil on your gloves to make sure that while you're kneading, it doesn't get stuck in between your fingers. Now, once the mixture has turned into a shaggy mix, we're going to take our salt, dump it in, and knead it a little bit more. We are also going to prep another surface for flour so we can knead out this entire dough onto a solid surface. Now we are going to knead this dough for about 7 to 10 minutes while it starts to form a smooth surface. To make sure you don't get all the dough stuck on you, again, use a little bit of olive oil. Even if you have a little bit of dough on you, just use the olive oil to scrape off the dough into your pile and start kneading. Knead the dough until you see that the dough has ran smooth. We are trying to build a gluten profile for our bread, so if you want to test out your bread, take a small section of it and string it out until you can see webbing into it. The more webbing, the more gluten that you have developed into it. If you feel that your dough is a little too sticky, feel free to add at least 50 grams of flour into your dough. You don't want to add too much to it so it becomes really dry, but you want to add enough so this way it doesn't stick to you every time you touch it. The more you move around your dough and the more gluten that we develop, the less it will stick to you and the more it will become a loaf of bread. After you've kneaded your dough and it's come out smooth, you want to take a bread knife and you want to mix it around a little bit into the form of a ball after you see it stopped sticking to you and the knife, and you want to place the ball in a well-oiled bowl and leave that in that bowl with a towel for at least 3 hours. Three hours later, we have a fully doubled and proofed sourdough mix. You can tell that it's been proofed and ready to use by the way it bounces back at you. You're going to remove it completely from your bowl into another fully floured surface. Bring some extra flour just in case if it's a little too wet. And what you want to do is you want to use the folding pattern to kind of pull this into a ball. We are now going to take our bread knife and we are going to cut the one bread into two breads, and we are now going to form the 2 loaves of bread. I form it by grabbing the under part of the bread, folding it over itself, rotating it 45 degrees, and doing the same thing. I copy this 4 times before flipping and tucking in all the sides. After you fully have tucked in your bread, you can then take your bread and place it on a parchment-lined, well-floured baking sheet or baking stone. I am using a baking stone just to get the bottom of my bread a little bit crispier than normal. Don't forget to drizzle a little bit of flour on top of it, and use your bread knife to scoop it off onto your pan. As you can tell, I am well flouring up my surface again. To make my other one, I am folding it in as I did with the last one, and then forming it into a ball to put onto the baking sheet. After both buns have been placed onto the baking sheet, you need to let your buns rest for at least 30 minutes before putting them in. They say the longer the proof, the better, but do not exceed over 5 hours of proofing. After 5 hours, your bread starts to expand and bubble up to the point where when you bake it, the crust and the insides of it will separate completely. Drizzle a little bit of flour on top of your bun and put it onto your baking sheet and get ready to cook. Setting our oven to 395 degrees Fahrenheit or 200 degrees Celsius, we are placing a metal bowl at the bottom of the oven, so this way we can create steam. The steam will help produce a crust on the outside exterior of your sourdough. We are now pulling out a knife. After 30 minutes, our sourdough has developed a nice crust onto it, and we are exposing some of the flesh by slicing down off center of the bread. Now I'm just making sure that my flesh is fully exposed before I put it in, just to give that nice sourdough crease that everybody loves. If you have any decals, you can spread a little bit of flour on top of it to give that lovely decal. And I am showing that very beautiful inside, as we can see some of the air holes starting to poke out. Very pretty buns. Now we're going to take these in and we're going to cook these for 30 minutes. And after 30 minutes, we have 2 beautiful looking pieces of bread coming out of the oven. You see they've expanded a little bit and they've done a little bit of tearing at the bottom, which is okay. Just shows you that it's aerating very, very nicely. As you can tell, my buns did combine together in the oven, and that is okay. While it is hot, we can separate them out. Make sure you do this before they've completely cooled. If you do this while they cool, then the bread could break on the outside. But doing this while hot, we will get a preview of what the aeration is on the inside, which is very, very nice looking. Now we're going to let these babies rest for 12 hours just so the crust can harden up, and we can cut into it. And there you have it. 2 soft and airy loaves of sourdough bread, ready for any type of sandwich that you're making, or even garlic bread. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Midnight Kitchen. Join in next week for another appetizing adventure. And remember, stay saucy.